If we start with the statement that there are more variations in the manuscripts of the New Testament than there are actual words in the New Testament, then why is it we Bible-believing Christians get so excited and declare it to be evidence for the reliability of the New Testament? Surely this cannot be correct. Let us delve into the question and see if we can find an answer to this and other questions that may arise about the New Testament manuscripts. There are 140,000 words in the New Testament, and there are 400,000 variations in the words to be found in the manuscripts that we translate the New Testament from, and that is just in the Greek manuscripts alone. Now, you could be excused for thinking that we have a problem with the reliability of the New Testament, but actually the opposite is the case. Why is that? Well, for two reasons. Firstly, the volume of manuscripts, and secondly, the nature of the variations. What do we mean by the volume of manuscripts? Well, just taking the Greek manuscripts alone, we've got over 5,800 manuscripts. Now, a manuscript can refer to anything from a fragment of one of the books of the New Testament to a complete set of all the books of the New Testament. Needless to say, the fragments tend to be the older manuscripts. For example, the oldest we have at the moment, because we're always finding new manuscripts, is a fragment of the Gospel of John, which is in the Rylands Library in Manchester in the UK. Now, this fragment contains only a few words of 7 lines on the front page, on the front side, and the same on the rear side. The exciting thing is that they are in agreement with what we have today. Now, of course, this is not proof that the New Testament is not corrupted, but it is evidence, a small part of the evidence, but it is evidence when you multiply this by 5,800 manuscripts in the Greek alone, that you have strong evidence for the reliability of the New Testament. So the point is this: we have a lot of variation because we have a lot of manuscripts. Let's look at this another way. If I lived 2,000 years ago, and as the head of the house, I wrote down a page of rules and instructions for the family to be an enduring guide for future generations, that copy I wrote would be the original. In manuscript terms, this is known as the autograph. Now let us say that by the time of my grandchildren starting to become adults, the original copy is starting to become what we in Britain would call dog-eared. Now, I don't know if that's a universal term, but it means that the quality is getting very poor. Maybe the writing has faded, some may have disappeared, maybe the corners of the papyrus, or if I've got enough money, parchment, have been eaten by moths, or maybe it's been folded and along the fold the writing is in a poor way. Now, my descendants may consider it a good idea to make another copy. So they say to one of the clan, "You've got the best handwriting, you're the best speller, make a careful copy." Now, with the best care being taken, it's likely that there will be a mistake in the copying somewhere. Now, if the family made 10 copies, would there be more or less errors? What about 100 copies? I think you see where I'm going with this. Another scenario: when Uthman found that variance was occurring in the Quran, what did he have done? He had a main copy made, well, 4 or 5 actually. Then what did he do? He had the old copies burned. Now, using my previous example, is burning the originals a good practice or the bad? It's bad, obviously. If you keep the original, even though they may have become harder to read over the years and some parts will be totally corrupted away, you at least have something left that you can use to get back to the autograph, at least with some parts of it. Burning old manuscripts is very bad practice when it comes to textual criticism. Now, textual criticism, by the way, refers to the process of getting back to as near as possible the autograph by analysing what you have as scientifically as you can. Because Uthman had the originals burnt, it is impossible to get back to the Quran. The best thing that can be achieved is getting back to the Uthman Quran. The second issue is the nature of the variance. What about those 400,000 variances? Well, these on the large part are made up of spelling differences, spelling mistakes and word order. For example, leaving just one single letter out of a word would count as a variance. In those days, there was no such thing as a spell checker or the dictionary. Another common issue was how to spell people's and place names. This is still an issue today. How many ways are there to spell Mohammed, for example? Despite the spelling, we still know who someone may be referring to when they use that name. Another common variance is to change the word order. Now, word order is fairly important in English, but we can still make some changes, such as changing how the boy threw the ball to the ball was thrown by the boy. In Greek, this is even less important because it is a highly inflected language. That is to say that the word ending decides what is the subject, what is the object, and what is the verb, etc., and not the word order. Other kinds of errors that creep in are missing a word out or copying from the wrong line. For example, putting the last word from line 3 into line 1. So, out of all the variances that we find, only 0.2% is what would be termed a meaningful variance. That is to say that the variance can change the meaning of the sentence in some degree, or that variance is suspect to some degree because it only occurs in late manuscripts. It is very important to say at this point that not one single occurrence of variance is in disagreement with the doctrine of the Christian Church. Not one. A couple of the most famous examples, which are also the largest with 12 verses each, are found at the end of the Gospel of Mark and in the Gospel of John. Now, Mark's Gospel seems to finish abruptly before getting to the resurrection of Jesus. We do not know the reason for this sudden ending, but it appears that maybe some person or persons took it upon themselves to add the story of the resurrection. This is what I suspect anyway. The example from John is of the famous passage about him that is without sin, let him cast the first stone. We are pretty sure that this doesn't belong to the Gospel of John. It's a neat story, it's very Jesus-like, and my theory is that, and keep in mind it's only my opinion, is that it had been distributed amongst some of the churches and someone thought it would be a good idea to preserve it by adding it to the Gospel of John. They shouldn't have done it, but at least we get a challenging story to think about. In neither example is Christian doctrine under threat. Now, the majority of the other examples affect just single verses and occasionally sometimes 2 verses. So to sum up, the only reason we have such a large amount of textual variance is because we have such a large amount of manuscript witness. Over 5,800 Greek manuscripts, between 5 and 10,000 manuscripts in other languages, something like an incredible 1 million quotes by church fathers, and something called the lectionaries, which are the list of portions of the Bible to be read at services. The largest amount of variances are of things such as spelling, word order, which are known as not meaningful variances. Meaning variances only account for 0.2%. We are confident that we know 98% of the New Testament. Now, don't confuse that 2% with the previous 0.2% for meaningful variance. We may not know exactly the correct spelling of, say, someone's name, but that is hardly meaningful variance. We have by far more manuscript witness for the New Testament than any other ancient literature. Take, for example, Homer's Iliad, where we have 1,750 copies, and the earliest copy is 500 years after Homer wrote it. Not one Christian doctrine is challenged by these variances. So, as always, thanks for listening. Please feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and may God bless you in your search for the truth.